There are endless combinations that you can choose to set up your locomotive exactly as you want it to sound. Hi there everyone, it's great to see you. I hope I find you well. Welcome back here to The Loft on Weir Yard with me, Jennifer Kirk. Now today we're going to be talking about sound decoders, and this is something that certainly the world of DCC has really brought home, that you can have locomotives that actually do sound like their real full-size counterparts. But that often comes at quite a price tag, and we've all seen the cost of decoders for sound, which can often be as much as the locomotive itself in the first place. But what if I was to say to you that there is a brand of decoders aimed firmly at the UK market with UK outline sounds that's actually about half the RRP of the big name brands of sound decoders? Well, actually, this brand is Soundtraxx, and they're probably quite well known to our US audience, where they're famous for the Econami range of sound decoders. But for quite some time now, they're probably one of the best kept secrets in the UK with their Econami budgetary conscious sound decoders, specifically loaded with sounds suitable for UK outline locomotives. They produce both a diesel and a steam outline, and Soundtraxx have very kindly sent over both the 21 pin and the wiring harness version of their steam outline decoders for us to take a good close look at. And thankfully as well, they've also sent over some speakers from their range as well, just to make this installation super easy. So if you want sound in your locomotives but you don't want to pay through the nose for the privilege, then come with me and I'm going to show you full installations and walkthroughs of some of these best kept secrets of the Soundtraxx Econami range. This video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, and we also have the full support of the Billy's Replacement Speakers merch store, where you can find in the links down below all of the t-shirts, the hoodies, the mugs and the die-cut stickers that you can be sporting and be the trendiest railway modeller on the block. Don't forget as well that we've got some affiliate links down below to help you find the products being featured today. And I hope that today's video helps you out not just in finding an alternative source of sound decoders at a great price, but also helps you with a few ideas on how best to fit these to your locomotives. Over in the US, Soundtraxx are well known for their Econami range of sound decoders, and they also do other accessories for DCC fitting and regular decoders as well. But what you may not be aware of is that Soundtraxx do a range of sound decoders aimed specifically for the UK market, and they've very kindly sent over this pair of steam-orientated sound decoders for me to take a good close look at. The name Econami is a play on the Econami brand that they're well known for, but also economy, and these come in at around half the RRP of something like the ESU or the Zemo sound decoders, which really does aim them squarely at the budget conscious modeler. The other thing which these decoders have very much going for them is they are actually really simple to set up. There are a number of different CVs which allow you to select the type of locomotive, the whistle type, number of cylinders and whether it's articulated or not. And you can mix and match between all of these different CVs. So if you want a GWR Prairie tank but with a Merchant Navy's whistle that has the flange squeal and exhaust beat of an articulated Bayer Garrett, well, you can do that with this decoder. It's also the case that you can be a little bit more conventional, and as you can see from the CV listing, we've got a whole host of different options which should hopefully give you a reasonable range to customize your locomotives. They are really easy to program, and Soundtraxx have very carefully made it so that there's only a few specific CVs that you really need to change. Everything else is taken care of by the decoder. There's no need to upload any sound files to these, and if you get bored with having it in one locomotive, there's nothing stopping you stripping it out and moving it over to another locomotive, and with a few simple CV setting changes, you can make that same decoder very easily match the all-new locomotive. As you can see here, we've got the 21-pin NEM socket variety, and this is just a straight plug-in to any locomotive with a 21-pin decoder socket. If you're using slightly older models with the 8-pin or 6-pin interface, they also do this particular decoder here, and this comes with a wiring loom, and we're going to have a go at wiring this into a locomotive. And what I actually recommend is that you get something like, if you've got where you've hardwired a decoder in the past, always save these little tails to the plug, and what we can do is we can solder this to the decoder and just make it really easy to hot plug this into the locomotive of our choice. Of course, no decoder is complete without the means to hear the sounds, and Soundtraxx have very kindly sent over some of their speakers to match up with these. So we've got from their range the oval speaker here, which is quite large, and I can see that that's going to be quite interesting to get quite a good sound out of it. And certainly, as their US sister brand Econami suggests, it really does help to create that kind of wall of sound. They've also sent over a pair of their mini cube speakers in baffles, and these are great for space-starved models. It's also the case that some of the UK outline models are increasingly coming from the manufacturers with a really easy slot to just accept this style of speaker directly without even needing to solder, so they really are a great choice. Now, for diesel modelers, you needn't feel left out, because actually the Econami range also includes the same size and form factor of decoders, but set up specifically for diesel sounds. And with those, again, it's a simple case of changing CV numbers to get, for example, a class 20 or a class 37 or a class 66 or even a first generation DMU. And again, it's all done through simple CV settings changes, and you may have heard these as well on Weir Yard, because I've got a first generation DMU, a class 101 from Bachmann, fitted with one of these Econami sound decoders, and it really does sound good. Moreover, the class 37 sounds that are on that sound decoder as well are in one of my Bachmann 37s, and they really do give good value for money. And when you compare it to the other budget level class 37 decoders, I've actually found it gives a really great sound that is head and shoulders above that cheaper budget sound decoder on the market. Now, I'm going to put these to one side, and I'm going to introduce the locomotives that I'm going to look to fit these into. So first up, the easier fit is going to be that 21-pin decoder. And I've chosen this Bachmann locomotive. It's one of the H1 class Atlantics. It comes with a 21-pin socket in the tender, and I've already unscrewed this so I can just carefully remove the top. And you can see inside there, we've got plenty of space. We've got the 21-pin socket there, and it's going to be a nice, simple, easy fit. So this is ideal for putting in that 21-pin decoder with the accompanying speakers. When it comes to the wired decoder, I'm actually going to put that into one of the Bachmann A4s, and I've got here, suitably enough, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Again, I've already removed the screws so we can take a look inside. And we've got actually here, you can see up through the chimney, we've got the double chimney, and that's going to give a really good route for the sound to escape. The locomotive itself, we have the 8-pin socket at the back, and then we've got a space here where currently there's a decoder, But it's quite clear that we can fit some speakers in quite readily just in this area of the locomotive, and we're going to look to try and get a really good sound out of this. Again, we can just customize those CVs to get the perfect sound file for this locomotive, and it's something that we can also compare it to another sound fitted A4 that I've got, just to see how close we can get that sound. So I'm going to crack on now, and I'm going to start off with the easy one. So we've got the Brighton Atlantic, and I'm going to fit in that 21 pin decoder and match it up with the speaker. On this locomotive, it's really easy. All we have to do is very carefully just lever out the old 21 pin decoder that's in here. Don't throw it away, you can use that in another locomotive. And one of the things as well that I will just point out here is that often on these 21 pin decoder locomotives, you've got the speaker terminals, and you can see them just there and there. That's where we're going to be wiring the speakers into. This also appears to come with a capacitor here, and I'm not quite sure what this does, so we're going to just leave that be. At the end of the day, if it isn't broken, don't try and fix it. So we're going to try and work around this large capacitor. So we've got the speaker installed. Now I've had to remove some of these extra weight pieces that were inside the tender, but I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. The additional weight of the speaker is nearly as much as these little metal plates, so not really too worried. And putting in the 21 pin decoder is actually really easy. Now don't forget to save the packaging, because this gives you all of the different function lists and the instructions on how to set up this decoder. And I've got the decoder here, and I have statically ground myself. So we're just looking for that pin 1. So I'm just going to show you there. You can see where there's effectively a missing pin. That's the locator, and we need to make sure that that matches up with the headers here. And it's just like any other DCC decoder install. Just press down gently, make sure it's in all the way, and that's all we need to do. The speaker itself, I've just used a bit of speaker wire to go from the tabs on the main circuit board across to the speaker itself, and I've used a little bit of Captain tape just to hold that down. Once the actual locomotive body is down on top, that will just help push everything down. Also, what we can do is take these metal plates and we can just stack them on top of the speaker, and what we're trying to do here is just make a bridge between the speaker and the top of the tender, so when everything's screwed in, everything is firmly in place and can't rattle. So I'm going to get all this together, and then we're going to take this to the programming track and then see just how it sounds. I've got the locomotive now set up on my rolling road, and I've also taken my microphone off and moved it close to the locomotive just so that you can get a flavour of the sound file. One thing that I will warn you is that, in common with North American practice, the locomotive sound will start the moment it receives power, usually when you turn your layout on. This is perfectly normal, and you can mute the locomotive simply by pressing F8. To get the locomotive to play its sound again, simply press F8 a second time and the sound will start again. Each of the whistle options features a number of playable function keys that allow you to get the locomotive to make different whistle sounds. These can be found on F2, F3, F9, and also, in the case of controllers such as the NCE Power Cab, on the horn/whistle button, and this allows you to play the F2 whistle function. At the moment, this locomotive is set up on CV123 to be a Stanya 8F. It has the whistle option on CV120 of a double fairley locomotive with its main whistle as opposed to the shunt whistle. These combinations you can choose whichever suit you from the list on the table, and it's simply an easy task of changing either of those CV numbers on your programming track. I'm now going to demonstrate this particular combination and then work through the other sound options that are available on the decoder. First, we unmute the locomotive with F8, and then we can start its moving. As you heard from that, there are a number of different spot sounds that you can also play whilst the locomotive is in motion, and it's simply a case of exploring the different function keys and seeing what works best for you. I'm now going to change the sound file that the locomotive plays and give you a demonstration of some of the other sound files that this decoder natively supports with just a couple of quick CV changes. I've now changed the sound program that the decoder is playing. I've changed CV123 to a value of 0, and this gives us the light 262 GWR Prairie. I've also changed the primary whistle selection on CV120 to the Peckett 060 tank Sergoma, and this is on value 2. Again, we activate the sound by unmuting the locomotive with F8 and then running through all of the different functions. As a final demonstration from this particular sound decoder, I want to demonstrate CV112, and this is where you change the locomotive to either a 3-cylinder by changing this to a value of 16, or you also have options for articulated locomotives with varying rates of wheel slip. In this example, I've picked an articulated locomotive with a fast wheel slip rate by setting CV112 to 224. This would be perfect for example, something like a Bayer Peacock Garrett or a double fairley locomotive. Again, to unmute the locomotive, we press F8. As you can hear from this, there are endless combinations that you can choose to set up your locomotive exactly as you want it to sound. It's also possible to move this decoder into another completely different locomotive and then reset it up with just changing those 3 different CVs until it suits that locomotive. It really is flexible. For this demonstration, I've changed CV123 to represent a medium BR standard class 4, and this is by changing it to a value of 2. I've also changed CV120 to represent a Southern Railway single chime with West Country short, and this is by changing the value to 15. Hopefully with this combination, it will be the perfect setup for the locomotive that the decoder is in. Again, we unmute it with F8. Turning now to the other decoder that Soundtraxx has sent over, this is the one that is perfectly suitable for the older style locomotives with things like an 8 and a 6-pin decoder interface. You will need to do a little bit of soldering and wiring, but it's actually quite simple to do. The decoder itself contains the same options that we had with the 21-pin decoder, and you may have noticed that I did avoid playing the A4 Pacific sounds that are on this decoder, and that's because they are the perfect match for this locomotive. Don't worry about working out where the wires go. Soundtraxx very usefully give you a comprehensive diagram that show where each of the wires should be wired to. You can see here as well we have 4 different auxiliary outputs, so if you wish to add things like locomotive lamps or firebox flicker, this is a really useful decoder that shows you exactly how you would be wiring these up. This package also includes an optional capacitor, which can just help a little bit during momentary power losses, but you don't have to add this, but it is included if you wish to. Everything else on this decoder setup is exactly the same as the 21-pin variety, and we can pick any of the locomotive chuffs, primary whistles, or the cylinder and exhaust here. All of these work just the same way as we demonstrated for the 21-pin. When it comes to installation, this is where things can just get a little bit more involved, and there is some soldering required. I've chosen this locomotive because it is the perfect option to demonstrate an older locomotive that thoroughly benefits from a sound installation that this Econami sound decoder will provide. First things first, let's just get rid of the locomotive body. And I'm just going to get rid of this optional plastic keeper plate, and then I shall remove the current decoder that's in this locomotive very carefully. Again, this is something that we can easily reuse in another locomotive, so it's a zero waste upgrade. With the decoder removed, we can see the 8-pin socket. For ease of this installation, I'm going to use this plug ready wired for an 8-pin decoder socket. It's simply a cast off from a time in the past when I hardwired a decoder to a locomotive, but they're always useful to keep because in situations such as this, what we can do is wire this decoder to this 8-pin plug, and that makes it hot swappable between any locomotives that we wish. So I've finished the installation. As you can see, it does come together very neatly. Now, one thing I will say is make sure that you use an actual 8-pin plug to wire to if you're going to go down this route. don't wire to a blanking plate because they are wired differently with some of the pins hardwired together, so it will just mess things up if you try and use one of those. I've plaited up the excess wire and just fed it in nice and neatly. It doesn't need any tape on this chassis, and anything extra plus the decoder is now firmly put back in underneath that neat keeper plate, and it really is quite an easy install. I have made sure that the two speaker wires here are still free, and now it's a case of bringing back in the locomotive body. And the reason for this is simply we're going to offer it up and then we can see what space we have available to put the speaker. So we've got this small speaker, and you can see there are two solder tab points. Those are where we're going to solder the speaker wires to. We can trim them so they're not quite so long, but it's simply a case of deciding where best to fit this speaker. Now, do we want it to face downwards or sideways? I'm guessing that actually facing down, there is a gap down there that the sound can escape through. So I'm going to just very carefully fit the body over the top just to make sure that it's going to go in there and not actually foul. And I can see there that with the speaker in place, the body will fit back on quite nicely. So that looks to be the perfect location for the speaker. What I'm going to do next is I'll actually just use a little bit of super glue to fix this little chamber into place onto the front of the chassis, and then I'm going to trim these wires and solder them to these solder points, and then our installation is pretty much complete. I've set the locomotive up on the rolling road just as we did with the last one, and as you can see my microphone is now in shot, and that's simply so we can capture the sounds that this decoder and speaker combination makes in this locomotive. I was actually really impressed with how easy it was to sound fit what would normally be quite a challenging locomotive. I've often regarded the steam locomotives where the decoder socket is in the locomotive rather than the tender as being a no-go area for sound. But as you saw in this installation, there is plenty of room with this speaker and decoder combination to do this, and there's even enough room left over for a stay alive if you were so minded. As before, the locomotive will start making its sounds the moment that it receives power, but you can just mute it by pressing F8, and when the time comes that you need it to make its sounds, we just press F8 again. I'm going to work my way through the suite of sounds so you can see just what this locomotive sounds like. And finally, the video wouldn't be complete without demonstrating the diesel versions of these decoders. The Soundtraxx Econami range also includes the exact same interfaces as we showed in the steam outline decoders, but these have a number of different diesel locomotive options on them. Looking at the paperwork for these, you can see it's fairly similar, but we've got here the different options for the prime mover, from the English Electric Class 20 through the Brush Class 31, Class 37, Class 47, 66 or 67, and that first generation DMU in the form of the BR Derby class lightweight. We've also got the same selection of horns suitable for all of those different locomotive options. Again, just like the steam outline locomotives, you need to either mute these or switch the engine off if you want to leave the locomotive silent on your layout. The moment its wheels touch the track, it will go through the startup sequence unless you interrupt it. I'm now going to move the microphone close to this locomotive and just work through the sounds, just so you can see what you can expect from the diesel decoders. Well, I hope you found that video really informative. What do you think about these Soundtraxx Econami decoders? Are these something that you've been using? Certainly, they have been available for a number of years here in the UK, and I was actually fortunate enough to just buy a couple off the peg. I saw them in a model shop and was actually really quite impressed with them. So when Soundtraxx approached me asking me if I wanted to review some of these decoders, I really jumped at the chance because I knew just how good they were. But is this something that you've used in the past? What do you think of what you've heard? And is this something that you might be interested in checking out in the future? Certainly we've got a link down below which will help you find these within the UK to buy, and hopefully this is a range that will be stocked in more and more model shops, making them easier and easier to get hold of. And in a sign of the support that Soundtraxx want to give to the UK market, they're already talking about different locomotives that they can record the sounds from to make even more useful decoders in this range for the budgetary conscious modeler. Don't forget to tickle that like button, share this video, and also subscribe to the channel to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. And in addition, don't forget that you can check us out over on Patreon and help support us to make the videos that you want to see. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying a big thank you to you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Take care and happy modelling. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grantline Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Papere, Karen Nicol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, and 3B Rail. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.